Hi, Movie Space here. Today, I'm going to explain an American family drama indie film called You Can Count on Me. Spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. As hard as it was, a mother decision is always right for protecting her family, even if it involves sacrificing what is dear for her. Torn between helping her brother and raising her son, Sammy had to make the right choice as her life depended on it. Sammy, as a single mother who struggled to keep her only son safe, was obliged to do what each mom would do for her child's best interests. Dressed up for a night out, Mr. Prescott drove the car with Mrs. Prescott sitting next to him in the front seat. In a dark, hilly two-lane highway along which Mr. Prescott was driving, the car crashed into a track. The car crash resulted in the death of Mr. Prescott and his wife. Sheriff Darrell broke the news to Amy, who was babysitting Sammy and Terry. Along with the mourners in the second row in the church sat Terry and Sammy. Both children were holding hands. Terry wiped his eyes with his free hand. A while later, a grown-up Sammy put some flowers on her parents' grave. She then took her son Rudy to school. On the way to school, Rudy mentioned to his mother that the homework they were given was about writing a story of their own. Rudy thought of the homework was unstructured, since they were supposed to be given a particular subject to write the story about. Sammy encouraged her son, saying that he could come up with something. Then the two hugged before Rudy entered the school. Reaching work late, Sammy had to see her boss Brian, who requested her in his office. Sammy explained that picking up her son from school was the reason she was late. She also mentioned that her former boss Larry wouldn't mind her being late for 15 minutes. As the manager of Merchants National Trust, Brian expressed his disapproval about Sammy coming late to work and demanded her to make other arrangements about picking up her son from school. On their way home, which was Sammy's parents' home, Rudy picked the mail up from the mailbox. In the mail, there was a letter from Terry. Sammy was really glad to read the letter, then classify it with other letters she kept in a drawer. At dinner table, Rudy asked his mother about the room where his uncle was supposed to stay. Sammy answered that he would stay in the living room, as he was going to be in the house for a little while. She then mentioned that it would be a chance for Rudy to get to know his uncle. After dinner, Rudy started writing an imaginative story about his father, which his mother disapproved as she read it without him knowing. Having no clue of how to deal with the situation, Sammy called her boyfriend Bob. At dinner table, Sammy mentioned to Bob the story Rudy wrote, and how she was confused about it, as she never mentioned anything to Rudy about his bad father. Sammy was reluctant to tell her son anything at all about him. Bob commented that the problem was behind his area of expertise, then expressed how glad he was to be called by Sammy. Lying in Bob's bed, Sammy thanks Bob for the lovely evening they had together before she could leave. In a tiny apartment, Terry showed up with Sheila, who seemed to be his girlfriend. Terry asked her for the money which he had her borrow from her brother. Seeing that the amount of the money is small, Terry argued with Sheila, who refused to borrow more from her sibling. He then told Sheila that he would be back soon, as his visit to his sister won't last long. As he was about to leave, he recommended Sheila to get back home when he got back from his sister's. A depressed Sheila hugged him before he left. As he reached Scottsville, his sister Sammy was already done with the fancy meal she cooked to welcome him. The phone rang and Sammy picked it up, yelling in excitement Terry's name. After secretly smoking his wrap joint, Terry walked his way to meet his sister. He suddenly ran into a rather gray Sheriff Darrell, who gave him a bear hug and walked with him a little. After the two engaged into a brief conversation, which was mostly about Terry and his state in life, Darrell parted ways with him. Standing near a restaurant, Terry was spotted by Sammy, who asked him to come in to give him a warm hug later. Sitting at a table in the restaurant, the two were catching up. Then Terry, who couldn't keep it anymore, confessed to Sammy that he was in jail during the period he ceased writing to her. Mad Sammy immediately recognized that her brother's visit was not for spending some time with her and her Rudy, but rather for borrowing money. After the two siblings had quite an argument at the restaurant, an angry Sammy withdrew money from an ATM and handed it over to her brother. As they reached home, Terry, after having a shower, called Sheila to no avail. Dialing the number of Malcolm, he knew from him that the girl tried to take her own life. A depressed Terry told Sammy about what happened to Sheila, whom he previously talked to her about at the restaurant. With Sheila not around in their apartment in Worcester, Terry couldn't pay her back the money he borrowed from her, so he put it in an envelope to send it to her. Sammy suggested to Terry to stay home for a while and he accepted the suggestion. Next morning, Sammy and Rudy went to the church, while Terry stayed at home and watched TV idly. Next day, Sammy instructed Terry to drive Rudy to the babysitter's house at 3:30 as the school finished. At work, Sammy passed by her colleague Mabel's desk, who was typing at her PC, as the color in the PC was a garish purple background with green letters. Sammy asked Mabel whether those colors would hurt her eyes. Mabel replied that they kept her fresh. At 3:30, Terry showed up to pick up Rudy from school, and they both exchanged a brief conversation as if they were getting acquainted. At work, Mabel informed Sammy that the babysitter called saying that Terry and Rudy never showed up at her house. In alarm, Sammy left the bank without even hearing Brian calling her name twice. It turned out that Terry and Rudy were at Orion's backyard banging nails with Ray. A moment later, Sammy, pulling up fast in front of Orion's house and getting out of her car, heard hammering from the backyard. As she quickly walked around the side of the house, she stopped short seeing Rudy hammering happily with Terry and Ray. Back to the bank where she worked, Sammy saw a note from Brian hanged on the PC on her desk. The note said, "See me ASAP." At Brian's office, Sammy had to provide an explanation for her sudden leave to a disappointed Brian. After dinner, both Rudy and Sammy went to bed while Terry went to a bar in town. Back from the bar, Terry entered sleepy Rudy's room, which used to be his as a child. The two talked about Rudy's father, Rudy Sr. Terry told Rudy the truth about his father being unlikable and mean because he deserted him and his mother. At work, a bored Sammy called Bob, who showed up in her house at night as the two were going on a date. Before leaving with Bob, Sammy instructed Terry to make sure that both he and Rudy go to bed at 10 and not to spend much time watching TV. When the time of watching TV came to an end, Terry and Rudy snuck in the bar to play pool. At Bob's apartment, a surprised Sammy sat at the dining room table looking at Bob, who proposed to her. Seeing that she was really confused on hearing his proposal for marriage, Bob suggested to Sammy to take some time and think about it. At the bar, Terry and Rudy had such a great time not knowing that Daryl, the sheriff, who was in the bar drinking a pint of beer, noticed them. The two managed to get back home before Sammy discovered they were out. Terry and Rudy agreed to keep the bar visit a secret, as Sammy would be upset with Daryl if she knew about it. Early morning, at the bank turning on his PC, garish green and orange colors appeared on the screen lighted up. The previous day, Brian complained to Sammy about the crazy colors some employees set their monitors to. As a loan officer, Sammy had the employees change the crazy colors. They set their monitors into conservative color palettes. Obliged to type at a gray screen with black letters, Mabel was really mad. Clearly it was her getting back at Brian, setting his PC monitor to garish green and orange colors. Sammy lost her temper and yelled at Brian as he called her to his office to talk about the changed colors in his computer screen. As the two argued, the whole staff was listening to their muffled, raised voice from inside the office. When Sammy was having her lunch at some restaurant, Sheriff Daryl approached her and told her about the night he spotted Terry and Rudy at the bar playing pool. Terry, who forgot to pick up his nephew from the bus stop, was sitting in the sofa watching TV while Rudy was waiting in a doorway for him. Rudy was wet and cold as the rain was pouring down. Showing his wife Nancy the bank, Brian introduced her to all the staff. The two then entered to Brian's office as 6-month-old pregnant Nancy wanted to sit down. A drenched Rudy, who struggled through the pouring rain to reach the town center, called his mom at the end of the hall in the bank. A moment later, a mad Sammy rebuked her brother Terry for being an undependable uncle for his nephew. Reaching Carol's house, Terry pulled up the car and asked Rudy to get out of it. Poor Rudy was unable to defend himself, watching his uncle accusing him of telling his mom about playing pool that night. So he got out of the car and went to the babysitter's house. At the bank, Brian and Sammy apologized to one another for stepping on each other's toes. Then the two had dinner, which paved the way to a love affair. At a late hour, Sammy came home and had a talk with Terry about Bob's marriage proposal. She also confessed to him that she slept with her boss. A surprised Terry wrapped his hand around the back of her neck, knowing that his sister herself was surprised at what she did. Sammy apologized to Terry for getting mad at him because of Rudy. Terry felt embarrassed of the way he treated Rudy when he knew it was Sheriff Darrell who told Sammy about the game. Next morning, Brian called Sammy to his office where they made out. Sitting at lunch, Sammy kept quiet as she knew that Bob would ask her about her decision concerning their marriage proposal. Sammy broke her silence when Bob asked her the questions she was avoiding the answer to. Obliged to reply, Sammy said that she was not ready yet to marry Bob. Late in the evening, Brian called Sammy and asked her to meet him. As Sammy left, Terry apologized to Rudy for his unjust accusation to him. Still upset, Rudy replied that he didn't care. At a motel room, Sammy and Brian made love hurriedly, then the two left to get back to their homes. Lying in bed, Sammy was plagued by the guilty feelings for what she and her boss were doing. As a caring sister, Sammy met the minister in the church at his office where she talked to him about Terry. To make up for his misbehavior with his nephew, Terry bought fishing tools for both of them. At the kitchen, Rudy talked happily about the tools his uncle bought to go fishing. The doorbell rang and Terry opened the door. It was Ron, the minister. While Rudy was playing basketball in the outside, Ron talked to Terry about what he did wrong in his life as a sort of advice to him. Terry didn't like it at all as he thought that the minister was there because he needed spiritual counseling. As the minister saw how Terry rejected the matter of counseling him as far as his behaviors were concerned, he tried to link his pieces of advice with the importance of Terry's life. Again, Terry never liked the idea of the minister counseling and was clearly mad at Sammy because it was her idea to make him advise Terry. Later after dinner, as Rudy asked Terry about the time they were supposed to go fishing, Terry replied that they were not going. Despite Sammy's begging Terry to consider the way he got back at her, Terry never wanted to give it a second thought. Outside the church, as Sammy with Rudy at her side was saying goodbye to some neighbors, Terry pulled up in front of the church and whistled to Rudy who ran towards him. Sammy, who laid her eyes on her boss and his wife Nancy, coming out of the church shortly before her brother Terry came, confessed to the minister about her love affair. At the stream, a bored Rudy who clearly didn't manage to get one fish complained to his uncle about his boredom. Terry told Rudy how good his father, Rudy Sr., was at fishing, hunting, and cars. Then he asked him whether he was curious to meet him. Before the two went to see Rudy Sr., whose house was not far from where they were, Terry made Rudy Jr. promise him not to say anything to his mother. After confessing to the minister about her love affair, Sammy, who recognized that she didn't want to get married, went to Bob's. A nervous Sammy sitting on the sofa at Bob's apartment eventually broke it to Bob that she didn't want to get married. She then left in a hurry to sleep with her boss. Rudy Sr. was not happy with Terry at Rudy Jr.'s visit. He didn't even let them in. Angered by the way he treated him and his nephew, Terry started a fight with Rudy Sr. The police were called after a moment and arrested Terry. Rudy Jr. was listening as his father denied he was his son when the police asked him to contact his mother. Worried, Sammy, who had no clue where her son and brother were, spent the night with Bob in her apartment. In the morning, the police called Sammy, who went with Bob to clean up the mess her brother Terry made. Luckily for Terry, Sheriff Darrell informed Sammy at the police station that Rudy Sr. wanted to forget all about the fight. As soon as Sammy got home, the phone rang. It was Brian who noticed her absence at work. Recognizing Brian's voice at the phone, Sammy hung up on him. Soon an angered Brian called her again and told her she was fired. Tucking Rudy to bed, Sammy told him everything he wanted to know about his father. Then coming out of his room, she headed to the living room where Terry was. Sammy asked Terry to move out because she thought he didn't know how to behave around her 8-year-old son. After she admitted how important Terry was to her at Rudy, Sammy suggested that Terry should get his own place with her financial help. She also wanted Terry to get his life back on track. Instead, Rudy watched his uncle packing his bags to leave. Next morning, Rudy was mad at his mother, who tried to explain to him that she couldn't have his uncle around for his best interests. At the bank, Sammy managed to work out a compromise with Brian for firing her. Rudy, who was no longer upset with his mother, said goodbye to his uncle before he left to Alaska. Sitting on a bench near the bus stop, Terry and Sammy reconciled. To Sammy, the separation was a heartache, but she accepted her brother's path in life.